The Alpha King thought she needed him. Then he watched another Alpha marry her. Chapter 1. The morning before everything broke, she was invisible. That is how the pack liked her. Quiet, useful, forgettable. Lyra knelt beside the healer's hut, grinding herbs with tired hands. Her fingers were stained green, her back ached. Still, she didn't stop. Faster, the head healer snapped. I am trying, Lyra said softly. A sharp laugh came from behind her. You always say that, one of the pack girls mocked. But you're still just a servant. Lyra didn't answer. She kept grinding, because answering made it worse. A shadow fell over her. Everyone went quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. Alpha Kale had entered the yard. The Alpha King, tall, cold, unshaken. He didn't look at anyone, except her. Just for a second. Then it was gone, like it never happened. Prepare the hall, he ordered. His voice carried authority that made the ground feel smaller. For what? Someone asked. Kale's eyes stayed forward. The mating announcement? Lyra's hands stopped. Her heart did not. Because mating announcements never involved servants. Never involved her. A girl nearby laughed again. Maybe they're finally sending her away. That should have hurt. But Lyra was used to pain. Still, something in Kale's gaze lingered too long. Like he was measuring her existence. Like she mattered. In a way she wasn't allowed to understand. Later that night, Lyra was sent to clean the Alpha's private corridor. She worked alone. Candles flickered along the stone walls. The pack was celebrating somewhere far above her. Music echoed faintly. Laughter, too. She stopped at a polished black door. The Alpha King's chamber. She was never allowed inside. But tonight, the door was open. Just slightly. She shouldn't have looked. But she did. Inside, Kale stood before a table covered in maps. And blood. Fresh. Her breath caught. You shouldn't be here, his voice said instantly. She stepped back. I was told to clean the corridor. Kale turned slowly. His eyes locked onto hers. No anger. No surprise. Just something sharper. Recognition. That wasn't what I asked, he said. Her throat tightened. I didn't hear you ask anything, Alpha. A pause. Dangerous. Heavy. Then he walked closer. Each step controlled, measured. Like a predator deciding not to strike. You hear more than you admit, he said quietly. Lyra swallowed. I just clean floors. Kale stopped right in front of her. Too close. Too close for a servant. Too close for safety. His gaze dropped to her hands. Bruised from herbs. Stained from work. Then back to her eyes. You will attend tomorrow's ceremony, he said. Her heart dropped. I am not chosen, she whispered. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not softness. Not pity. Something worse. Conflict. You will be, he said. The words didn't make sense. Her breath shook. I don't understand. Kale leaned slightly closer. His voice lowered. You will pretend you do. A sudden crash echoed from outside. Shouts. Guards yelling. The hall erupted into chaos. Someone screamed. An intruder is inside the pack grounds. Kale didn't move away from her. Not even when blood scent filled the air. His eyes stayed locked on hers. And then he said something that made her world split open. Stay behind me, or they will kill you first. Lyra froze. Why would they? The door behind her slammed open. A warrior burst in, eyes wide with panic. Alpha King? The second Alpha has arrived early. Kale finally looked away. Just for a second. But it was enough. Because in that second, Lyra saw it. Not anger, not authority, fear. And outside the corridor, a new voice echoed through the pack, claiming arrival, claiming war, claiming her name, even though she had never been chosen. And Kale whispered, almost to himself, so it begins. But Lyra didn't hear the rest. Because the lights went out. Chapter 1. The darkness swallowed everything. Lyra froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Someone grabbed her wrist. Strong, fast, controlled. Not Kale. Her body reacted before her mind did. She tried to pull away, but the grip tightened. "Don't move," Kale's voice said beside her. Too close, too calm, like chaos outside meant nothing. Then, a blade sparked in the dark, metal scraping stone. A growl echoed down the corridor. The intruder had entered the hall, and he was close. Too close. Lyra felt her pulse hammer. "I can't see," she whispered. "You don't need to," Kale replied. Another sound. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not a guard. Not pack. A stranger walking like he owned the darkness. A new voice filled the corridor. Cold. Confident. "Kale," it called. Still hiding secrets in the shadows? Lyra felt Kale's grip shift slightly. Not fear. Control tightening. "You came early," Kale answered. The stranger laughed. "I came for what is mine." Silence snapped tight, like a rope about to break. Lyra felt something shift in the air. Pressure. Heavy. Wrong. Her knees nearly buckled. Kale steadied her without looking. "You're shaking," he said quietly. "I'm fine," she lied. "No," he said. "You're reacting." "To what?" she whispered. Kale didn't answer. That silence was worse. The intruder stepped closer. Now his voice was clearer. "You brought her out already." Lyra's heart stopped. "Her?" Kale's voice sharpened. "Leave this corridor." A soft laugh again. "No." A pause. Then the stranger spoke like a blade sliding free. "I want the girl who doesn't belong to your pack." Lyra went cold. Her fingers trembled. "I think you're mistaken," Kale said. But his voice changed. Just slightly. Lyra heard it. The lie. The protection. The secret. The intruder exhaled slowly. "I can smell her fear from here." That sentence broke something in the air. Kale moved instantly, pushing Lyra back behind him. Hard. She hit the wall. Pain shot through her shoulder. But she didn't speak. Because the sound Kale made next was not human. It was alpha. Danger rising. "I said leave," Kale growled. The stranger stopped. For the first time, interest entered his voice. "Oh," he said softly. "So she matters more than you admitted." Silence stretched. Then footsteps again. Closer. Closer. Kale lifted his hand. A signal. The corridor filled with sudden movement. Guards rushing in. Blades drawn. But they didn't see the intruder. Not clearly. Only shadows shifting. Then, a guard screamed. Not loud. Cut off too fast. Something hit the ground. Lyra's stomach dropped. "What is happening?" she whispered. Kale didn't answer immediately. Then, low and controlled. "Stay behind me." The words were the same as before. But now they meant something else. Protection. Or warning. The intruder laughed again. "You still think you can hide her destiny?" Kale snapped. "I don't care about destiny." A pause. Then colder. "I care about control." That made Lyra's chest tighten. Control. Not safety. Not mercy. Control. She didn't understand why that hurt more than fear. A sudden surge of pressure slammed through the corridor. Lyra gasped. Her vision blurred. Something inside her chest reacted. Like a pulled thread. Like something answering a call. Kale turned sharply toward her. For the first time, alarm broke his face. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I'm not doing anything," she said quickly. But it was a lie. Because she felt it too. The air was reacting to her. The intruder went silent. Completely silent. Then his voice changed. Lower. Careful. "Interesting," he said. Kale stepped in front of her fully now, blocking her from everything. "Don't speak," he ordered her. But it was too late. The intruder had already noticed. "I see it now," the stranger said. A slow step, then another. "You didn't bring a servant, Kale." Lyra's heart pounded. Kale's voice was ice. "Enough." But the stranger continued. "You brought a key." Silence shattered again. Lyra felt Kale's body tense. A key. What did that mean? She opened her mouth. But Kale's hand covered her mouth instantly. Firm. Warning. Then he whispered, "Only for her. Do not react to anything he says. Her eyes widened. Through his hand, she breathed fast. The intruder stopped again, then spoke softly. Tell me, he said. Does she know what she is? Kale didn't answer. That was the answer. Lyra's chest tightened painfully. What I am? She tried to say through Kale's hand. He didn't move. Didn't let her speak. But the stranger laughed like he already won something. Oh, he said. She doesn't. The corridor lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then returned dimmer. Like the pack itself was holding its breath. Kale leaned closer to the darkness. If you touch her, he said quietly, I will end your line tonight. The stranger paused. Then, unexpectedly calm, you won't get the chance. A sound echoed above them. A horn. Deep. Old, pack-wide alarm. Then footsteps. Hundreds. The entire pack moving now. And the stranger whispered something that only Kale seemed to hear. She's not just your secret anymore. Kale's hand tightened on Lyra's mouth. Harder, like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. Then, a new voice echoed from the far end of the corridor. Loud, clear, commanding. I claim entrance under blood right. Lyra felt Kale go completely still, and for the first time, he whispered something she was never meant to hear. The second alpha is here. The darkness shifted again, and this time, it smiled. Chapter 2. The pack gates exploded open. Wind tore through the courtyard. Torches bent backward like they were afraid. Lyra stood behind Kale, still pinned between him and the wall. His hand had finally dropped from her mouth, but she didn't speak. She couldn't, because the air outside felt different, wrong, heavy like a storm thinking. The horn continued to echo. Once, twice, then stopped suddenly. Silence fell, and in that silence, footsteps entered. Not rushed, not chaotic, controlled. A single figure walked through the broken gate, tall, dressed in dark silver armor. His presence didn't announce itself. It pressed down, like the world made space for him unwillingly. Someone whispered from the guards, Second Alpha. Kale's jaw tightened. Lyra felt it. The tension. Not just rivalry. History. The newcomer stopped in the center of the courtyard. Rain began again. Slow, soft, almost respectful. Then he spoke. I didn't come for war. His voice carried without effort. Every pack member heard it. Even Lyra. Kale answered instantly. You broke my gate. A faint smile touched the stranger's lips. I knocked. A pause, then colder. You didn't answer. Lyra swallowed. She shouldn't be listening. She should be hiding. But Kale didn't move her. Not yet. That meant something was wrong. The stranger's gaze slowly scanned the courtyard, until it landed on the corridor entrance. On Kale. And then, slightly past him, Lyra felt it, like a lock clicking. The stranger tilted his head. There she is. Lyra froze. Kale moved instantly, blocking her completely now. You're mistaken, Kale said, but his voice was tight, too tight. The stranger smiled wider. I'm never mistaken. A guard stepped forward. My alpha, the intruder earlier. He didn't finish, because the stranger lifted one hand, and the guard stopped speaking. Not by force, by pressure, by authority. The guard stepped back instead, eyes unfocused, afraid. Lyra's breath caught. What is he doing? She whispered. Kale didn't answer. His silence was becoming a language she was learning to fear. The stranger began walking forward. Slow, unhurried. Each step made the ground feel smaller. I heard rumors, he said casually. Kale didn't move. I don't care what you heard. A soft laugh. You always say that. He stopped 10 feet away, then looked directly at Kale. But rumors are how I find truths you hide. The air tightened again. Lyra felt it in her ribs. Something inside her reacted. That same pull from before. Stronger now. She gasped softly. Kale turned his head slightly. Control it, he whispered. I'm not doing anything, she said again. But her voice shook. The stranger noticed. Of course he did. His eyes shifted. Slowly. directly to her again. And this time, there was no doubt. Interest. Recognition. Like seeing something he had been searching for a long time. Kale stepped forward half a step. A warning. "Don't look at her," Kale said. The stranger smiled faintly. Too late. Silence cracked. The pack behind them held its breath. Then the stranger spoke again. Soft, almost curious. "What is your name?" Kale answered before she could. "She is nothing important." The words hit harder than expected. Lyra's chest tightened. Nothing important. She had heard worse. But coming from him, it landed differently. The stranger raised an eyebrow. Then why does the pack react to her like that? Kale's voice sharpened. Enough games. But the stranger ignored him. His attention stayed on Lyra. "I can feel it," he said quietly. Kale moved again, fully blocking her now. Anger rising. "She is a servant," Kale said. Nothing more. A pause. Then the stranger exhaled slowly. "No." That single word changed everything. The courtyard went still. Even the rain seemed to pause. The stranger tilted his head slightly. "She is not a servant." Kale's eyes darkened. The stranger continued. "She is a sealed presence." A murmur broke through the pack. Confusion. Fear. Lyra felt it too. Sealed presence? What did that mean? Kale's voice dropped. Dangerously low. "You should leave." The stranger shook his head. "I came to confirm something." He took one step closer. Then another. "Now I have." Kale's energy shifted. Lyra felt it like heat. Like pressure building. The guards stepped back instinctively. The stranger stopped directly opposite Kale. Then said quietly, "You hid her well." Kale's reply came instantly. "I didn't hide anything." The stranger smiled. "That's what makes this interesting." A beat. Then softer. "Because someone else did." Silence fell again. Lyra felt her stomach drop. Someone else. Not Kale. Not the pack. Someone before them. The stranger's gaze flicked to Lyra again. "This is not your pack's secret," he said. "It's older." Kale's voice cut like ice. "Leave." But the stranger didn't move. Instead, he said the words that made everything collapse. "She belongs to the original bloodline." And Lyra stepped back without thinking. Kale turned instantly. "Don't listen to him," he said sharply. But she already was. Her heartbeat felt wrong. Too loud. Too fast. Like it recognized something before her mind did. The stranger's eyes softened slightly. Not kindness. Understanding. "You don't even know," he said to her quietly. Kale snapped. "That is enough." Power surged around him. The courtyard trembled. Guards stumbled back. But the stranger didn't react. Not fear. Not respect. Only calm. Then he spoke one final sentence. One that shattered everything. "I didn't come to fight you, Kale." A pause. "I came to take her back." Silence exploded. Kale moved. Faster than thought. The air cracked with alpha pressure colliding, and Lyra, for the first time in her life, felt two worlds pulling her apart. And neither of them were asking permission. Chapter 3. The collision of alpha pressure shattered the courtyard air. Stone cracked under invisible force. Guards dropped to one knee. Some couldn't even stay standing. Lyra pressed herself against the corridor wall, trying to breathe. But the air felt too thick. Too alive. Kale stood in front of her like a locked blade. The second alpha stood opposite him like a calm storm. Neither moved. But everything was already moving. Inside Lyra, the stranger spoke first. "Step aside, Kale." Kale's voice was low. "No." A pause. Then colder. "You don't get to take what belongs to my pack." The second alpha tilted his head slightly. "That's the thing." A faint smile. "She doesn't." Silence snapped tight again. Lyra's fingers trembled. She hated that her name was not even spoken, but everything still pointed to her. Kale didn't look back at her, but his voice dropped slightly. A warning meant only for her. "Don't trust anything he says." "I'm not trusting anything," she whispered, but her voice betrayed her fear. The second alpha stepped forward one pace. "Then let her choose." Kale's eyes sharpened. "That is not possible." The stranger smiled. Oh? Another step. Or are you afraid she won't choose you? That hit harder than steel. Something flickered in Kale's expression. Gone too fast to name. But Lyra saw it. Doubt. The second alpha raised his hand slightly. Not attack. Invitation. Come here, he said gently. Lyra froze. Every instinct screamed no. But something inside her pulled toward him anyway, like a forgotten thread tugging at her chest. Kale moved instantly, grabbing her wrist again. Hard. Not gentle this time. Don't, he said sharply. Lyra winced. Kale, you're hurting me. He didn't let go. That was the first crack. The second alpha's eyes narrowed slightly. There it is, he said softly. Kale snapped. Stop speaking like you know her. The stranger's voice lowered. I know what she is. A beat, then quieter. You just haven't accepted it yet. The wind shifted, and Lyra felt it again. That pull. Stronger now. Like something inside her was waking up. Her vision blurred for a second. She stumbled. Kale tightened his grip. Control it, he whispered urgently. I don't know how, she breathed. The second alpha's gaze softened slightly. Not pity. Recognition. Of course you don't, he said. Kale turned sharply. What did you do to her? The stranger looked surprised. I did nothing. A pause. Then darker. But she's responding. That sentence made the guards whisper behind them. Fear spreading like fire. Lyra shook her head quickly. I don't understand any of this. The second alpha took one more step forward. Now only a few meters away. His voice dropped. Calmer. Slower. Tell me, he said. Do you ever feel like the world reacts to you before you react to it? Lyra hesitated. That question hit too close. Too real. She remembered broken moments. Candles flickering when she passed. Animals calming when she entered the yard. People stopping mid-sentence when she looked at them. She had always thought it was coincidence. Now it felt like something else. Kale's voice cut in. Enough manipulation. But the stranger ignored him. Do you? He asked again. Lyra's lips parted. Sometimes. Kale's grip tightened instantly. Don't answer him. But she already had. And something in the air shifted. The second alpha exhaled slowly. Interesting, he said. Then he looked at Kale. You're not just hiding her. A pause. You're suppressing her. The courtyard went silent. Even the wind stopped. Kale's voice turned dangerous. You are making accusations in my territory. The stranger didn't move. I'm stating fact. A beat. Then softer. She's reacting now because she's close to awakening. Lyra's stomach dropped. Awakening. The word felt wrong, but familiar at the same time. Kale stepped forward. You will stop speaking. The second alpha shook his head. No. Then he looked at Lyra again. You are not a servant. Lyra whispered. Then what am I? The entire courtyard seemed to lean in. Even Kale went still. The second alpha's answer came quietly, carefully, like he was afraid of breaking something. You are what they erased. Silence. A deep, suffocating silence. Lyra's breath trembled. What does that mean? Kale snapped. It means nothing. But his voice cracked slightly at the end. And that was enough. The second alpha saw it. Of course he did. His expression shifted. Subtle satisfaction. You do know, he said to Kale. Kale's eyes darkened. I know enough. The stranger smiled faintly. No. A pause. You know fragments. He stepped closer again. Now only a few steps away from Lyra. Kale moved instantly between them, but the second alpha didn't stop. He spoke past Kale. To awaken something like her, someone had to seal her first. Lyra's breath caught. Seal. That word again. Kale's voice turned deadly. Say one more word and you will leave this courtyard in pieces. The second alpha looked at him calmly. You won't kill me. Kale's silence answered too quickly. The stranger nodded slightly, as I thought. Then his gaze returned to Lyra. Because you're afraid what happens if she remembers. Lyra's knees weakened slightly. Kale noticed. He steadied her again. But this time, she didn't feel safe in his grip. She felt trapped. The second alpha spoke one final time. Soft. Final. You don't belong to either of us yet. A pause. But you will. And then, he did something no one expected. He stepped back. Lowered his head slightly. Not submission, acknowledgement. I will return when the seal breaks further, he said. Kale's voice cut instantly. You will not return at all. The stranger smiled one last time. Oh, Kale. Then his eyes flicked to Lyra. This was never your story to control. And then he turned. Walked away. Just like that. No battle. No victory. No closure. Only questions left bleeding in the air. Kale didn't move for a long moment. Neither did anyone else. Until Lyra whispered again. Kale? His name sounded different now. He turned slightly. Not fully. What am I? A long silence. Then Kale said the one thing she had never heard from him before. I don't know. And somewhere deep inside her chest, something finally answered that truth. With a crack. Chapter 4. The courtyard stayed frozen even after he left. No one spoke, no one breathed properly, like the world had forgotten how. Lyra stood still beside Kale, but she didn't feel his hand anymore. Not really. Even though he was still there, still close, still guarding her like she might disappear, something had changed. Inside her. It wasn't loud. It was worse. It was awareness. Slow. Spreading. Like ink in water. Kale finally spoke. Everyone back to position. His voice snapped the pack awake. Guards moved fast. Too fast. Avoiding her. Avoiding looking at her. That hurt more than she expected. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was something worse. Seen. Kale turned slightly toward her. Come with me. It wasn't a request. She followed anyway, because what else could she do now? They walked through the broken corridor, the same one from before. The silence between them felt heavier than noise. Halfway down, Lyra stopped. Kale noticed instantly. What? Her voice was small. You said you didn't know what I am. Kale didn't answer right away. That silence again. The dangerous kind. Then, I said the truth. Lyra swallowed. Then why did you hide me? Kale's jaw tightened. I didn't hide you. A pause. Then quieter. I contained you. That word hit her harder than anything else. Contained. Not protected. Not saved. Contained. Her hands curled slightly. Like something dangerous? She asked. Kale's eyes flickered. Not denial, not agreement. Something in between. Like something unstable, he said finally. Lyra felt her chest tighten. I never hurt anyone. Kale stepped closer. Not yet. That broke something fragile inside her. She stepped back instinctively. Don't talk like I'm a weapon. Kale's voice stayed steady. You're reacting to two alpha presences at once. A pause. That is not normal. Her throat tightened. Maybe I'm just scared. Kale shook his head once. No. A beat. Fear doesn't do what you did in that courtyard. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. She hated that he was right. They kept walking, but now it felt different. Not escort, not protection, containment. They reached the inner chamber. Kale shut the door behind them. He locked it. Lyra noticed immediately. Her heart tightened. Why are you locking it? Kale didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a shelf and pulled down a black sealed box. Old, worn, marked with symbols she didn't recognize. Her stomach sank. What is that? Kale hesitated. That hesitation terrified her more than words. Then, something I hoped I would never need. He placed it on the table. Didn't open it yet. Just stared at it. Like it might bite. Lyra stepped closer slowly. What is inside? Kale finally looked at her. And for the first time, he looked tired. Not powerful, not cold. Tired. Answers, he said. A pause. And danger. Her breath caught. That doesn't help me. It's not meant to. That was honest. Too honest. She stood across from him now. The sealed box between them like a barrier. Tell me the truth, she said softly. Kale's eyes sharpened slightly. You won't like it. I already don't like anything happening to me. That landed. A flicker in his expression. Then he exhaled slowly. You are not from this pack's lineage. Lyra frowned. I know that. Kale shook his head. No. A pause. You are not from any current lineage. Silence. That didn't make sense. Then what am I from? Kale's hand hovered over the box, then stopped. You are from a bloodline that was erased. Lyra's heart beat hard. Erased how? Kale's voice lowered. By fear. That word again. Fear. Everything came back to fear. The second alpha. The way everyone reacted. The way Kale avoided saying too much. Her breath grew shallow. Why would anyone erase a bloodline? Kale finally opened the box. A cold sound. Metal releasing after years. Inside, old parchment, cracked seals, and a small black stone pulsing faintly, like it was breathing. Lyra stepped back instantly. What is that? Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said, because your bloodline didn't just exist. A pause. It dominated. Her stomach dropped. That doesn't sound like something people erase. Kale looked at her. No. Then quieter. It sounds like something they fear surviving. A sharp knock hit the door. Both of them froze. Another knock. Louder. Urgent. A guard's voice outside. Alpha King, she's reacting again. Kale moved instantly toward the door. But before he reached it, the black stone in the box cracked. A sound like glass breathing. Lyra stumbled back. Her vision flickered, and suddenly, she wasn't in the room anymore. She was somewhere else. Dark. Empty. A voice echoed inside her head. Not Kale. Not the guard. Not the second alpha. Something older. Something buried. You're waking too soon, Lyra gasped, and slammed back into reality. She fell to her knees. Kale turned sharply. What did you see? Her voice shook. I don't know. A pause, then quieter. But something saw me first. The stone in the box pulsed again. Faster now. Kale's expression changed completely. Not control, not authority. Alarm. Because for the first time, he realized containment wasn't working anymore, and whatever Lyra was starting to remember itself. Chapter 5. The door burst open. Guards flooded the chamber. Alpha King! Containment field is failing! Her scent. It's spreading through the halls. Kale snapped his head up. Clear the room. No one moved fast enough. The stone in the box pulsed again, harder, like a heartbeat waking up. Lyra was still on the floor, her hands pressed against her head. I can't think, she whispered. Kale stepped toward her, but stopped halfway, because the air between them changed. Warm, electric, unstable. One guard suddenly dropped to his knees. Her presence, it's too strong. Another stumbled back, eyes wide. She's not suppressing it anymore. Kale's voice cut like steel. Get out! This time they obeyed. Doors slammed shut behind them. Silence returned. But it wasn't calm. It was pressure. Lyra lifted her head slowly, her eyes unfocused. Kale. He didn't answer right away, because he saw it now. Something was shifting behind her eyes. Not madness, not fear. Awakening. He crouched slightly. Stay with me, he ordered. Her laugh was broken. I don't know where else to go. The stone cracked again. A thin fracture. Light leaked from inside it. Black light. Wrong light. Kale reached for the box. Stopped. Then pulled his hand back like it burned him. That seal should not be breaking, he muttered. Lyra forced herself to stand. Her legs shook. I saw something, she said quietly. Kale looked at her instantly. What? Her voice trembled. A place, not real, but not gone. A pause. And someone speaking to me. Kale's expression tightened. Did it say its name? Lyra shook her head. No. Then softer. But it said I was early. Kale went still. That was the first real crack in his control. Early for what? She asked. Kale didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the box and pulled out the parchment. Old writing. Burnt edges. His fingers tightened slightly as he read. Lyra stepped closer despite herself. What is it? Kale didn't look up. This is a record, he said. A forbidden one. Lyra swallowed. About me? A pause. Then Kale nodded once. The air shifted again. The stone pulsed violently. Crack. A sharper break. Light spilled out. The room flickered. For a split second, Lyra saw something inside it. A symbol. Not language, not rune. Something older than both. And it looked familiar. Her chest tightened instantly. I know that, she whispered. Kale looked up sharply. You shouldn't. Lyra backed away slightly. But I do. The stone pulsed again. Faster. Almost frantic. Then, a whisper filled the room. Not from Kale. Not from Lyra. From everywhere. Return. Lyra gasped. Her knees nearly gave out again. Kale moved instantly to her side. But the moment he touched her, the stone exploded with sound. Not fire. Not metal. Memory. The room vanished. Lyra stood in a field of ash. The sky was broken. Red clouds. Silent wind. And wolves. Huge ones. Kneeling in rows. Before a throne made of bone and silver. She couldn't move. But she was there. Watching. A woman stood before the throne. Not Lyra, but someone who looked like her. Same eyes, same stance, different power. The woman spoke. They will come for what we are. A voice answered from the throne. Then let them try. The woman turned slightly and looked directly at Lyra. Even though Lyra wasn't supposed to exist here. You are not ready, the woman said. Lyra tried to speak, but no sound came. The woman stepped closer. The seal is breaking too soon. Then, a hand reached out. Cold, familiar. The vision shattered. Lyra collapsed again in the chamber. Kale caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was shaking violently. Lyra, he said sharply. She gasped for air. I saw her, she whispered. Kale froze. Who? Lyra's eyes widened. The one who looks like me. Silence. Dead silence. Kale slowly set her down, then turned toward the broken stone. His voice dropped, barely audible. That wasn't supposed to happen. Lyra grabbed his sleeve weakly. What wasn't? Kale didn't answer immediately. Then finally, you saw the origin memory. Her breath hitched. Origin of what? Kale looked at her, and for the first time, there was no control left in his voice. Of your bloodline. A sharp knock hit the door again. But this time it wasn't a guard. It was something heavier. The entire door shook. A voice echoed from outside. Calm. Certain. I warned you, Kale. The second alpha. Kale stood instantly. Lyra struggled upright. You again, Kale muttered. The voice continued. And now the seal has cracked. A pause. I can feel her waking. Lyra's chest tightened violently. Kale's hand moved toward the door, but stopped. Because the second alpha said something softer, almost regretful. If she fully remembers. A pause. Neither of us will control what happens next. Silence. Then, a final line that froze the room. Open the door, Kale, or I will. Chapter 6. The door didn't open. It shattered. Wood exploded inward like it had been struck by invisible force. Guards outside screamed. Then silence. The second alpha stepped through the broken frame, unhurried, unbothered, like destruction was just weather. His eyes moved immediately to Lyra. Not Kale. Not the room, her. Kale stepped in front of her instantly. Don't come closer, he said. The second alpha sighed. You're still doing this. Kale's voice hardened. I said stop. A pause. Then the stranger's gaze shifted slightly. I can feel it now, he said quietly. The fracture is worse. Lyra's breath caught. What fracture? She whispered. Kale didn't let her step forward. Stay behind me, he ordered. But this time, she didn't obey immediately, because something inside her reacted again. Stronger, sharper, like the air recognized her fear. The second alpha noticed her hesitation. That's it, he murmured. Kale snapped. Don't speak to her. The stranger ignored him. Do you feel that? He asked Lyra. Her voice trembled. Yes. Kale turned sharply. Lyra. But she stepped slightly forward anyway. Just enough to see him past Kale. The second alpha. His expression changed slightly. Not surprise. Relief. You're stabilizing, he said softly. Kale's jaw tightened. You are not stabilizing anything. The stranger looked at Kale now. You're suppressing a collapsing seal. A pause. That's why she's breaking through. Lyra pressed a hand to her chest. It hurt now. Not physically. Deeper. Like something inside was pushing outward. What seal? She asked again. Kale didn't answer. That silence was becoming unbearable. The second alpha spoke instead. Your bloodline was never meant to fully awaken in this era. Kale's voice turned cold. You are guessing. The stranger smiled faintly. No. He took a slow step forward. Because I've seen one before. Kale stiffened. That got his attention. Lyra's voice was barely audible. Seen one, like me? The second alpha nodded once. Not like you. A pause. The original. The room went still. Even Kale didn't interrupt immediately. Lyra's throat tightened. The woman I saw? She whispered. Yes, the stranger said. Kale's voice cut in. That was a memory fragment, not reality. The second alpha shook his head. It was both. Kale turned slightly toward Lyra. Don't listen. But she was already listening too deeply. The second alpha continued. Your bloodline doesn't just carry power. A pause. It carries memory across generations. Lyra swallowed. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to, he replied. Because it was designed before sense existed. Kale moved suddenly, grabbing Lyra's wrist again. Hard. This is manipulation, he said sharply. But the second alpha's eyes narrowed. No. A pause. This is correction. Kale's energy flared. The room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Guards outside hesitated, but didn't enter. They were afraid. All of them. Lyra winced. Stop, she whispered. Both alphas paused. She looked between them. I can't breathe when you do that. Silence. The pressure eased slightly. Kale didn't let go of her wrist. The second alpha spoke more softly now. You're reacting to two anchors. Kale snapped. She is not an anchor. The stranger ignored him. She is the origin point. Lyra pulled her wrist slightly. Kale didn't release. Her voice cracked. You're hurting me again. That landed. Kale loosened his grip slightly, but didn't let go. Conflict flickered across his face. The second alpha watched carefully, then said something quieter. You feel it too, don't you, Kale? Kale didn't answer. That was answer enough. Lyra looked at him. Feel what? Kale's voice was low. You destabilize everything around you. Her breath caught. That's not my fault. I didn't say it was, Kale said quickly. Too quickly. The second alpha stepped forward again. Her presence responds to recognition. A pause. Which means the seal is tied to perception. Kale's eyes sharpened. Stop analyzing her like a subject. The stranger finally met Kale's gaze fully. You already did that. Silence snapped. Lyra felt it again. The shift. Inside her chest. Stronger. Painful now. She stumbled slightly. Kale caught her. This time faster. Closer. Lyra, he said sharply. Focus on me. But her vision blurred again. No, she whispered. And then, the world cracked open. She stood in darkness again. But this time, it was not empty. It was full. Voices everywhere. Hundreds. No, thousands. All speaking at once. A language she almost understood. She saw the throne again, but now it was closer, and the woman from before stood beside it, waiting, watching. You're leaking, the woman said softly. Lyra tried to speak. No sound. The woman stepped closer. The seal is not just breaking, she said. It is choosing what to release. Lyra's breath hitched. Then the woman leaned in and whispered, Do not trust the one who contains you. The vision shattered violently. Lyra collapsed fully this time. Kale barely caught her. Her body was cold, shaking. The second alpha stopped. Even he looked slightly serious now. Kale held her tightly. Lyra, he said again. Her eyes flickered open. Barely. Don't, she whispered. Kale leaned closer. Don't what? Her voice broke. Don't let me wake up fully. Silence. That request hit harder than any attack. The second alpha's expression changed. Too late, he said quietly. Kale looked up sharply. What do you mean? The stranger stepped back slightly. Because she's no longer just reacting. A pause. She's choosing. Lyra's hand tightened faintly on Kale's sleeve. And in a voice barely there, she whispered the final words of the chapter. I think something inside me wants out. Chapter 7. Kale went completely still. Not the controlled stillness of an alpha. Something deeper. Like the world had just shifted under him. Lyra's fingers were still gripping his sleeve. Weak, shaking, but real. The second alpha exhaled slowly. That's the problem, he said quietly. Kale snapped his head up. What did you do to her? The stranger didn't react to the anger. Only concern. I didn't do this, he said. A pause. She is doing it herself. Lyra's eyes fluttered open again, but they didn't focus properly. Like she was half here, half somewhere else. I hear it, she whispered. Kale tightened his hold slightly. What do you hear? She hesitated. Then, something calling me by a name I don't know. Silence. The second alpha looked at Kale. Tell her, he said. Kale's voice turned sharp. No. That single word felt final. But it wasn't strong enough anymore. The room itself felt unstable. The walls flickered slightly with pressure, like reality was thinning. Lyra tried to sit up. Kale supported her immediately, but she flinched slightly at his touch. That hurt him more than it should have. Don't touch me like I'm going to break, she whispered. Kale went still. I'm trying to keep you from breaking. A pause. She looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time without fear, only confusion. Or are you afraid I'll become something you can't control? That question hit silence into the room. The second alpha almost smiled. Kale didn't. His voice lowered. I am afraid you'll disappear. That changed everything. Even Lyra froze slightly. The air softened for half a second, then tightened again. The second alpha stepped forward. You should tell her now, he said. Kale didn't look at him. She is not ready. The stranger's tone hardened slightly. She is already waking. A beat. And if she wakes without truth, he stopped. Didn't finish. Lyra whispered. What happens then? No one answered immediately. That silence was worse than danger. Finally, Kale spoke. Then you won't come back as yourself. Lyra's breath caught. That doesn't make sense. Kale looked at her. It doesn't need to, the second alpha added quietly. Because the version of you that returns won't belong to anyone here. Lyra pulled slightly away from Kale. Not fully. Just enough to feel the space. Stop talking about me like I'm already gone. Kale's grip loosened slightly, but he didn't let go. I'm not, he said, but it didn't sound convincing anymore. The second alpha looked between them, then said, There's something you need to understand. Kale's eyes narrowed. No more riddles. The stranger nodded. Fair. He turned slightly toward Lyra. The original bloodline didn't just have power. A pause. It had inheritance memory that activates under threat. Lyra frowned weakly. Inheritance memory? Yes, he said. Meaning you are not learning who you are. Another step closer. You are remembering who you were forced to forget. Kale interrupted sharply. That was sealed for a reason. The second alpha looked at him. And now it's failing for a reason. Lyra's head throbbed again. Images flickered at the edge of her mind. The throne. The woman. The ash sky. She whispered. I saw her again. Kale immediately turned to her. When? Just now, she said weakly. The second alpha's expression shifted. That's not a vision anymore, he said. Kale tensed. What is it then? The stranger answered slowly. A bleed-through. Silence. Lyra's breathing became uneven. I don't understand what's happening to me. Kale's voice softened slightly. You're reacting to exposure. But even he didn't sound sure anymore. The second alpha shook his head. No. A pause. She is merging. That word landed like a strike. Kale stepped forward instantly. No. The stranger didn't argue. Look at her. Kale hesitated. Then did. Lyra's eyes were slightly different now. Not fully changed. But layered. Like something behind her was pressing forward. Kale's voice dropped. Lyra? She flinched slightly at her own name. I feel like I'm splitting, she whispered. Kale moved closer. You are not. But she shook her head. Yes, I am. A pause. I think there are two of me. Silence. The second alpha nodded once. That's the seal separating identity from origin. Kale's energy flared slightly. This is dangerous. The stranger agreed. Yes. A beat. That's why she must choose, Kale snapped. She cannot choose while unstable. The second alpha's eyes sharpened. She cannot stabilize without choosing. Stalemate. Pressure rose again. The room trembled. Lyra suddenly gasped. Her body arched slightly. Stop, she whispered. But the pull inside her chest intensified. Kale held her tighter. Stay here, he said urgently. But her eyes drifted past him. Toward the second alpha. That movement alone changed Kale's expression. Something like fear crossed it. The second alpha noticed immediately. So it's already started, he murmured. Kale's voice turned dangerous. What has started? The stranger answered without looking away from Lyra. Her alignment, Lyra whispered weakly. What does that mean? Kale tightened his hold. It means nothing. But the second alpha said the truth anyway. It means your body is deciding where your power belongs. Silence. Then Kale said quietly, that is not allowed. The second alpha met his gaze. It already is happening. Lyra's breathing quickened. I don't want this, she said. Kale leaned closer. Then resist it. But even as he said it, he knew. It wasn't something she could resist anymore. Because somewhere deep inside her, something finally answered her fear. Not with comfort, not with silence, but with awakening. And the chapter ended with Lyra whispering, I think I'm remembering how to leave you. Chapter 8. The words hit Kale harder than any blade. I think I'm remembering how to leave you. For a moment, no one moved. Not even the second alpha. Lyra's breathing was uneven, like she was fighting two currents inside her body. Kale held her tighter. Don't say that, he said quietly. It wasn't an order anymore. It sounded like something else. Something closer to fear. Lyra's eyes flickered. I don't know if I'm saying it, she whispered. Or if it's already decided. The second alpha stepped back slightly. That's the merging effect, he said. Kale snapped his head toward him. Stop naming it like it's inevitable. The stranger's voice stayed calm. It is inevitable. Silence cracked again. The air in the room trembled. The sealed box on the table shuddered. Kale noticed instantly. No, he muttered. He moved toward it. But Lyra's voice stopped him. Kale? He froze. She was sitting up now, barely supported, and she was looking at him differently. Not afraid, not confused, but distant. Like she was trying to remember him from far away. What did you do to me? She asked softly. Kale's voice tightened. I protected you. A pause. That is not the same thing, she said. The words cut deeper than she intended. Kale flinched slightly. The second alpha watched quietly. This is what happens when suppression becomes identity, he said. Kale turned sharply. Enough. But Lyra was no longer looking at Kale. Her gaze shifted slowly toward the second alpha, and Kale saw it. The moment it changed. Not attraction, not trust. Recognition. Like something in her was remembering a path that had been blocked. Kale stepped between them instantly. No. Lyra blinked. What? Kale's voice was sharp. Do not follow that pull. She frowned slightly. I'm not following anything. But her hand moved slightly toward the second alpha anyway. Not consciously. Kale caught her wrist again. Immediately. Too fast. Too tight. Lyra winced. Stop doing that, she said. Kale loosened his grip slightly but didn't let go. "You are being drawn," he said. The second alpha spoke calmly. "She is responding to resonance." Kale snapped. "Stop speaking like she is an experiment." The stranger's gaze stayed on Lyra. "She is not an experiment." A pause. "She is an origin carrier in forced dormancy." Lyra's head tilted slightly. "Origin? Carrier?" Kale tightened again. "Don't listen." But she did. Because the words were unlocking something again. Inside her mind. Flashes returned. The throne. The ash sky. The woman's voice. "You are not ready," Lyra whispered. She said that before. Both alphas went still. Kale's grip loosened slightly. "When?" he asked quickly. Lyra blinked. "In the vision." The second alpha exhaled slowly. "That confirms it." Kale's voice was low. "Confirms what?" The stranger looked at Lyra. "That the memory is not passive anymore." Kale turned sharply. "Explain." The second alpha finally met his eyes. "She is starting to access timeline memory." Silence. Kale's expression hardened. "That is impossible." The stranger shook his head. "It shouldn't be possible." A pause. "But she is not bound by what should be." Lyra suddenly gasped. Her vision flickered again. But this time, she didn't fall away. She stayed present. Even as the other place rose around her, the ash field returned. But now it overlapped reality. The chamber and the throne world merged. Kale saw it too. His eyes widened slightly. "Lyra," he said carefully. She wasn't fully here anymore, but she was still speaking. "I see both," she whispered. The second alpha stepped forward slowly. "That's the merge threshold." Kale's voice sharpened. "Get away from her." The stranger didn't. Instead, he spoke gently to Lyra. "You are close to remembering the breakpoint." Lyra's voice shook. "What breakpoint?" The ash sky behind her flickered. The woman appeared again. "Closer now." And she spoke. "They separated you before the war." Lyra's breath hitched. Kale reached for her, but she flinched away slightly. Not rejecting him. Conflicted. That was worse. The second alpha murmured. "It's happening faster than I expected," Kale snapped. "Stop observing and fix it." The stranger looked at him. "There is nothing to fix." Kale's energy surged. The room shook harder now. Dust fell from the ceiling again. Lyra gasped. "Stop," she whispered again. Kale immediately forced himself to lower the pressure, but his eyes stayed locked on her. "Come back to me," he said quietly. The words surprised even him. The second alpha noticed. Of course he did. Lyra turned slightly toward Kale. Her voice broke. "I don't know how." A pause. Then softer. "I think I'm losing the version of me that knew you." That silence hurt differently. Kale didn't answer immediately, because something in him resisted that truth. The second alpha spoke again. "She is not losing it." A pause. "She is replacing it." Kale's voice went cold. "With what?" The stranger answered simply. "The original." Silence collapsed again. Lyra suddenly clutched her head. Pain spiked. Both worlds collapsing together. The ash sky cracked violently. The throne woman stepped forward fully now and said, "It is time." Lyra gasped. Back in the chamber, the stone in the box shattered completely. A shockwave of black light exploded outward. Kale grabbed Lyra instantly. But this time, she didn't collapse. She stood, slowly, eyes open. Different. The second alpha stepped back once. Even Kale froze, because Lyra looked up and spoke in a voice that was not fully hers. "I remember now." And the chapter ended as Kale whispered, "Lyra, what are you becoming?" Chapter 9. Silence did not return. It broke, like glass falling forever. Lyra stood in the center of the chamber, but she wasn't fully standing there. Kale could feel it instantly. Half of her was still trembling. The other half was awake. Too awake. The second alpha didn't move. For the first time, his calm expression was gone. Not fear, but calculation losing control. Kale stepped forward slowly. "Lyra," he said carefully. She turned her head toward him, but it wasn't the same gaze. Not empty, not confused. Deep. Like she was seeing him through layers of time. You are still here, she said softly. Kale's jaw tightened. Yes. A pause. I am. The second alpha spoke quietly. She's stabilizing into the origin state. Kale snapped. Stop labeling her. But Lyra raised a hand slightly, not stopping Kale, not inviting him, just acknowledging the sound of his voice. I remember the seal now. Oh, she said. Kale went still. What seal? He asked. Lyra blinked, slowly, then looked at her own hand, like she was surprised it was still hers. The one you call containment, she said. Kale's breath tightened. That was protection. She shook her head slightly. No. A pause. It was separation. The room trembled again. The second alpha stepped forward half a step. Lyra, he said carefully. She turned to him, and for a moment, something softened in her expression. Recognition, but not trust. History. You were there, she said quietly. The second alpha didn't deny it. Yes. Kale's voice dropped dangerously. You knew her before this. The stranger finally looked at Kale. I knew what she was before you built walls around her. Kale's energy surged. The chamber cracked again, but Lyra lifted her hand slightly, and the pressure stopped. Instantly, Kale froze. The guards outside the broken door felt it too. Everyone felt it. Lyra had stopped him without trying. Her eyes widened slightly. I did that, she whispered. The second alpha nodded once. Yes. Kale looked at her like something sacred had just changed shape, but also something dangerous. You're not controlling it, Kale said quietly. Lyra shook her head. I'm not trying to. A pause, then softer. It responds to me. The second alpha exhaled. That's the origin state. Kale stepped forward. Enough of that. But Lyra didn't react to his authority anymore. That was the problem. She looked at Kale for a long moment, then asked, Why did you contain me? Kale hesitated. That hesitation answered more than words. The second alpha spoke instead. Because you were going to be used. Kale snapped. That is not true. But Lyra didn't look at him. She was listening to the silence between their words, the truth inside it. I saw her again, she said quietly. Kale's voice tightened. The woman? Lyra nodded. She said I was not stolen. A pause. She said I was split. The chamber went still. Even the broken stone fragments stopped vibrating. The second alpha whispered, That's the truth line. Kale turned sharply. What does that mean? The stranger answered carefully. It means she was divided into two existent states. Kale's voice rose slightly. That is impossible. Lyra suddenly flinched, and reality shifted again. The ash world merged violently. The throne appeared behind her fully now. Not illusion. Overlap. The woman stepped forward, closer than before, and said, You were not meant to survive whole. Lyra staggered. Kale reached for her, but stopped. Because she lifted her hand again, and this time, Kale froze mid-step. Not forced, not attacked, just stopped. Like the world obeyed her pause. The second alpha exhaled sharply. She's crossing control threshold. Kale looked at Lyra. For the first time, real fear entered his voice. Lyra, stop this. She looked at him, and for a second, something human flickered behind the awakening. I don't know how, she said again. Then the woman in the vision spoke directly into both worlds. You must choose the missing half. Lyra whispered. Missing half? The second alpha answered quietly. She's not complete yet. Kale's voice hardened. She is complete. The stranger shook his head. No. A pause. She is divided consciousness waiting for reintegration. Lyra suddenly clutched her chest. Pain surged. Not physical. Identity. The chamber flickered violently. Kale moved again, this time shouting, Lyra, stay with me. Her eyes snapped toward him. And for a brief moment, she did. But the other half pulled harder. The throne woman raised her hand, and behind her, another silhouette appeared. Unclear. Hidden. Waiting. Lyra gasped. There's someone else, she whispered. Kale froze. What do you see? Her voice broke. Another version of me. Silence exploded. The second alpha stepped back slightly. No, he said quietly. That shouldn't be active. Kale turned sharply. What shouldn't be? The stranger's expression darkened for the first time. The split outcome. Lyra's vision sharpened. The second silhouette stepped forward and smiled at her. Not kindly, not warmly, familiar, too familiar. And Lyra whispered the final words before everything cracked fully open. I think there are 3 of me. The chamber shattered into light. Chapter 10. The chamber didn't just break. It unraveled. Stone, air, sound. Everything split into layers of existence. Kale reached for Lyra, but his hand passed through her for half a second, like she wasn't fully anchored anymore. Lyra, he shouted. His voice felt distant, even to him. The second alpha stepped forward, but stopped instantly, because the air itself had changed. It was no longer reacting to power. It was reacting to identity. Lyra stood at the center of collapsing worlds. 3 layers of her consciousness overlapped in the same body. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. She was held up by something else now. Something ancient. The throne world fully emerged. Ash sky. Broken sun. Silent wolves kneeling again. And the woman, now standing directly in front of her, close enough to touch. You're destabilizing, the woman said softly. Lyra whispered, I don't feel like one person anymore. The woman nodded once. You never were. Kale stepped forward again, this time forcing himself through the distortion. Lyra, listen to me, he said urgently, but she turned slightly toward him. And for the first time, her expression held conflict instead of fear. I hear you, she said. A pause. But I hear them too. The second alpha spoke carefully. All 3 states are active. Kale snapped his head toward him. Fix it. The stranger shook his head slowly. I can't. Kale's energy surged. The entire space trembled violently. But nothing responded normally anymore. Lyra lifted her hand again. And Kale froze. Not because he was forced, but because something in her presence aligned with reality itself. The woman in the ash world stepped closer. You must choose, she said again. Lyra shook her head. I don't understand what I'm choosing. The second silhouette appeared behind the woman again, smiling, cold, and it spoke. You choose which version survives. Silence. That sentence hit everything. Kale's voice broke slightly. No. He moved closer. You don't choose that. Lyra looked at him. And for a moment, she softened. Kale? He reached for her again, and this time, she didn't disappear, but she didn't fully return either. I remember you, she whispered. Kale froze. Hope flickered. Then she continued. But I also remember before you. The second alpha exhaled slowly. That's the origin fracture stabilizing. Kale snapped. She is not a fracture. But Lyra suddenly stepped back. Not from fear. From separation. The worlds behind her began to divide again. 3 versions of her began forming more clearly. The servant girl. The sealed origin queen. And the unknown third version, the one smiling in the shadows. Lyra's voice shook. I don't want to disappear. The woman in the throne world replied gently. You won't disappear. A pause. You will decide what you are allowed to be. Kale shook his head. That is manipulation. But Lyra looked at him and whispered, what if I don't want to be contained anymore? Silence. That question shattered Kale's control completely. The second alpha spoke softly. Then containment ends. Kale turned sharply. You don't understand what that means. The stranger met his gaze. I understand it better than you. A pause. Containment ends whether you approve or not. The air cracked again. The 3 versions of Lyra began separating further. Kale stepped forward desperately. Lyra, choose me, he said suddenly. The words surprised even him. Silence. Lyra looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't respond immediately. The servant version flickered. The origin queen remained steady. The third version smiled wider. Then Lyra whispered, I don't think I can choose only one of you. Kale froze. The second alpha closed his eyes briefly. That's the collapse point, he said quietly. The world began to tear fully. And then the Origin Queen spoke for the final time. Then merge. Everything stopped. Kale's eyes widened. The second alpha went still. Lyra whispered, "Merge, what?" The queen stepped forward. "All that was split must return." The servant version shook its head. The shadow version smiled. Kale's voice broke. "Lyra, don't." But it was already happening. The three versions of her began moving toward each other. Kale reached out one last time. And this time, he held her hand. All versions of her at once. And Lyra cried out softly, "I remember everything now." A pause. Then, barely audible, "And I remember you trying to save me. From myself." The light consumed everything. Kale's last thought was her name. And Lyra's last thought was not fear. It was choice. Epilogue. Final scene. Silence. Then breath. A single inhale. Kale opened his eyes. He was kneeling. In a rebuilt chamber. Whole. Undamaged. The second alpha was gone. Everything was still. Too still. Kale stood slowly. "Lyra?" he called. No answer. He walked forward, step by step, until he saw it. A figure by the broken window, standing, watching the horizon. She turned slightly, and Kale stopped breathing. It was Lyra, but not the girl he contained. Not the queen from the Ash world. Not the shadow version. Something unified. Something new. Her eyes met his. Calm. Powerful. Unreachable. "You chose," Kale whispered. Lyra shook her head slowly. "No." A pause. "I did not choose one version." Kale stepped closer. Hope and fear colliding. "Then what are you?" She looked at the horizon again. And answered softly, "I am what survived the choice." Silence. Kale whispered, "Do you remember me?" A long pause. Then she looked at him again. And said, "I remember everything." A beat. Then the final truth. "But I am not yours to contain anymore." The wind moved through the broken window. And she turned away, not leaving, not staying, simply existing beyond reach. And Kale stood there, finally understanding the cost of awakening her. Too late. But not forgotten.